The Pittsburgh Steelers entered this offseason knowing they couldn't fix everything in free agency. Every team has holes, every roster has questions, and every front office has to prioritize. But when you look closely at what just happened in Pittsburgh, it's clear the organization managed to address several key areas almost exactly the way they hoped. The team needed offensive playmakers, they needed help in the secondary, and within a short window they brought in players who could immediately change the dynamic of this roster. 3 new additions recently spoke with reporters, and when you listen to what they said, you start to understand not only why the Steelers targeted them, but also how they see themselves fitting into the identity of this team. One of the most intriguing additions comes in the secondary with cornerback Jamal Dean. The Steelers had been looking for a reliable presence opposite Joey Porter Jr., and Dean fits that role almost perfectly. Over the past 2 seasons, Dean has allowed only 1 touchdown pass in coverage. Interestingly enough, that's just 1 more than Porter has allowed during that same stretch, which says a lot about the potential of this pairing. When Dean was asked about playing alongside Porter, his answer reflected confidence without any unnecessary hype. He made it clear that he doesn't feel the need to say much because Porter's performance already speaks for itself. In his mind, the formula is simple. Porter will handle his side of the field, and Dean will handle his. That kind of mindset is exactly what Pittsburgh wants in its defense. Dean arrives with strong credentials as well. According to Pro Football Focus, he ranked as the 5th best cornerback in the NFL, and advanced analytics from Next Gen Stats paint an even more impressive picture. Dean allowed the fewest yards per target among outside cornerbacks in the entire league, giving up just 4.5 yards per throw. Quarterbacks targeting him posted a passer rating of only 41.3. Those numbers suggest a player who consistently disrupts opposing passing attacks. But the story isn't just about coverage statistics. Dean also brings a physical style that fits the Steelers' defensive identity. At 6'1" and 206 pounds, he's capable of contributing in the run game as well, something Pittsburgh values heavily from its defensive backs. When he talked about his approach to playing corner, he referenced his time at Auburn under defensive coordinator Kevin Steele. The philosophy there was simple and aggressive: press coverage everywhere, all the time. The mentality, as Dean described it, was that receivers would get pressed before the bus ride, after the bus ride, and throughout the entire game. It's all about disrupting timing, throwing off routes, and forcing quarterbacks to hesitate. For Steelers fans, that mentality should sound very familiar. Pittsburgh defenses have long been built around physicality and aggression, and pairing Dean with Joey Porter Jr. could give this team 2 starting corners who thrive on challenging receivers right at the line of scrimmage. When you think about how important that can be in today's pass-heavy NFL, it's easy to see why this move might quietly become one of the most important of the offseason. But the Steelers didn't stop with the secondary. Another area the team wanted to strengthen was the running back position, specifically by adding someone capable of sharing the workload with Jaylen Warren. That's where Rico Dowdle enters the picture. The 6-foot, 200-and-few-pound running back arrives after producing back-to-back 1,000-yard rushing seasons with 2 different teams, showing both consistency and adaptability. Dowdle's journey to this point hasn't been typical. He entered the NFL as an undrafted free agent in 2020 when he signed with the Dallas Cowboys under head coach Mike McCarthy. That experience shaped his mindset in a big way. Dowdle openly talked about carrying a chip on his shoulder because of how his career started. Unlike first-round picks who arrive with guaranteed opportunities, undrafted players have to prove themselves every year just to stay on the roster. That constant pressure helped shape the mentality he brings to the field. In 2024, Dowdle rushed for 1,079 yards while also catching 39 passes. The following year, after joining the Carolina Panthers, he delivered another productive season with 1,076 rushing yards and the same number of receptions. That type of production highlights his versatility. He can run between the tackles, catch passes out of the backfield, and contribute in pass protection. In many ways, his all-around skill set mirrors what Jaylen Warren already brings to the Steelers' offense. Dowdle himself even acknowledged that similarity. He described both himself and Warren as north and south runners who like to attack vertically and play a physical brand of football. And interestingly enough, there was already a connection between the two before this signing happened. Warren had reached out to Dowdle during the previous season, telling him that he liked his style of play and encouraging him to keep representing undrafted players across the league. Now, the 2 backs will be teammates, carrying that same underdog mentality into Pittsburgh's offense. Dowdle also mentioned that Mike McCarthy played a major major role in his decision to join the Steelers. Having previously worked with him in Dallas, Dowel already understands the philosophy behind McCarthy's system. The offense starts with establishing the run game and controlling the line of scrimmage. Physicality is the foundation, and everything else builds from there. When you step back and look at these two moves alone, you begin to see a pattern. The Steelers didn't just add talent, they added players whose mentality fits the culture the organization has built for decades. Physical defenders, tough runners, competitors who believe in proving themselves every season, and yet there's still another addition that might be even more fascinating when you consider how it changes the offense as a whole. Because Pittsburgh didn't just add help in the secondary or depth in the backfield, they also made a bold move to reshape the receiving core with a player who could dramatically alter the passing attack. So the question now becomes, how exactly does this new weapon fit alongside the other playmakers already in Pittsburgh, and what could it mean for the future of the Steelers' offense? What do you think about these moves so far, Steelers fans? Do you believe these additions can push the team closer to a championship run? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And that brings us to the move that may have quietly changed the entire outlook of the Steelers' offense. The arrival of wide receiver Michael Pitman Jr. For quite some time, Pittsburgh had been searching for a legitimate number 2 receiver who could line up across from DK Metcalf and force defenses to respect both sides of the field. That search ended the moment the Steelers made the decision to trade for Pitman. When you look at the physical profile of this new receiving duo, it immediately jumps out. Pitman stands at 6'4" and 223 pounds. Metcalf is 6'4" and 229 pounds. That means Pittsburgh now has 2 massive physical wide receivers on the outside, something you don't often see paired together in the NFL. It's the kind of combination that can create serious problems for defensive backs who are used to dealing with smaller, quicker receivers rather than 2 players who combine size, strength, and physicality. Pitman arrives in Pittsburgh after spending the first 6 years of his career with the Indianapolis Colts. Last season, he caught 80 passes for 784 yards and 7 touchdowns. But when you look at his overall production across his career, the consistency becomes even clearer. Over 6 seasons in the league, Pitman has averaged 87 receptions and 940 receiving yards per year. That kind of steady production is exactly what the Steelers were looking for when they evaluated their options. When Pitman spoke about joining Pittsburgh, it became clear that one major factor influenced his excitement about the move: the offensive vision of head coach Mike McCarthy. Pitman described McCarthy as an offensive-minded coach who believes in spreading the ball around and keeping defenses guessing. While Pitman didn't go into deep tactical details, he did explain that the offensive approach will allow him to expand his role and run a more diverse set of routes. For a receiver like Pitman, that's a big deal. He's already proven that he can be a high-volume target, including his 2023 season when he caught a career-high 109 passes for 1,152 yards. But what excites him about this opportunity is the chance to do even more within the structure of the offense. Instead of being limited to certain roles, he expects to be used in a variety of ways that maximize his skill set. Another aspect of Pitman's mindset that should resonate with Steelers fans is how he views the running game. Even though he's known for catching passes, Pitman made it clear that he takes pride in doing the dirty work that helps the offense function as a whole. Blocking on the perimeter may not show up in the stat sheet, but it can turn a short run into a huge gain. Pitman explained it in very simple terms. A 5-yard run can suddenly become a 30-yard explosive play if receivers are doing their jobs downfield. For him, being part of those moments is just as important as catching passes. That mentality fits perfectly with the physical identity the Steelers want to maintain on offense. There's also a personal element to Pitman's journey that adds another layer to this story. He's the son of former NFL running back Michael Pitman Sr., who once played for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Football has been part of his life for as long as he can remember, and now he finds himself entering a completely new chapter after spending 6 years with one organization. Pitman admitted that leaving the Colts wasn't easy. After all, 6 years with one team represents a significant portion of his life and career. Those relationships with teammates and coaches don't just disappear overnight, but at the same time, he also expressed genuine excitement about what lies ahead in Pittsburgh. When he first spoke with Mike McCarthy about the opportunity, he said the conversation immediately energized him. At 28 years old, Pitman understands exactly where he is in his career. He's experienced enough to know what it takes to succeed in the NFL, but he's still in a position to make a major impact for a team that believes it can compete at a high level. That combination of experience and motivation is part of what made him such an appealing target for the Steelers. Steelers. And when you step back and look at everything the Steelers accomplished in this stretch of free agency, you start to see a clear theme emerging. They didn't just add talent. They added players who believe in physical football, players who embrace competition, and players who genuinely believe this team can chase a championship. Jamal Dean brings elite coverage ability and a press man mentality that fits perfectly with Pittsburgh's defensive identity. Dowel adds another tough, productive runner who shares the same underdog mindset as Jaylen Warren, and Michael Pitman Jr. gives the offense a powerful new receiving threat who can complement DK Metcalf while also contributing in every phase of the game. Individually, each move makes sense, but together, they tell a bigger story about the direction of this roster. The Steelers didn't just try to patch holes. They targeted players whose playing style and mentality align with the culture that has defined this franchise for decades. Now the real question is how quickly all of these pieces will come together once the season begins. On paper, the roster looks stronger in several key areas. The secondary could be more disruptive, the running game could be deeper and more physical, and the passing attack suddenly has one of the most intimidating wide receiver pairings in the league. But as Steelers fans know better than anyone, potential only matters if it turns into results on the field. So now I want to hear from you. Do you think these moves truly push the Steelers closer to a Super Bowl run? Or do you believe there are still major questions that need to be answered before this team can reach that level? When you connect all the pieces of what the Steelers have done, the bigger picture starts to become even more interesting. This wasn't just about filling depth on the roster. The front office clearly targeted players who could immediately contribute while also reinforcing the identity the team wants to play with moving forward. Physical football, discipline at the line of scrimmage, and players who are comfortable doing the difficult work that often doesn't show up in highlight reels. Look again at the defensive side. Bringing in Jamal Dean doesn't simply add another cornerback to the rotation. It changes how the defense can operate. When you have two outside corners who are comfortable playing press coverage and disrupting receivers at the line, it gives the defensive coordinator far more flexibility. It allows more aggressive looks up front, it allows pressure packages, and it puts pressure back on opposing quarterbacks who now have to deal with tight coverage on both sides of the field. Dean made it clear that his approach hasn't changed since his college days at Auburn. The mentality there was constant pressure on receivers, constantly challenging timing, constantly forcing the offense to adjust. That style fits naturally with what Steelers fans have watched for years from their defenses. Instead of playing soft coverage and reacting, the philosophy is to dictate what the offense is allowed to do. If Dean and Joey Porter Jr. both perform the way they have recently, Pittsburgh suddenly has a secondary capable of matching up with some of the best passing attacks in the league. And in today's NFL, where passing games dominate, that kind of reliability on the outside becomes incredibly valuable. Then on the offensive side, the addition of Dowel gives the backfield another reliable weapon. The interesting thing about Dowdle's situation is that his path into the league mirrors that of Jaylen Warren in many ways. Both came into the NFL without the spotlight of being high draft picks. Both had to earn their opportunities the hard